Welcome. So I'm Josh from British Strongman Coaching. Tonight I'm going to talk about deload, how often. I'm going to say that I put out on Instagram that deloads are overrated. So I'm actually going to discuss this and just hopefully educate people and give like a few different sides of the coin. So first of all, what is a deload? So a deload is actually just a rest. It's like a kind of fancy name that we've given it over time. We've adopted it in kind of powerlifting, strongman, weightlifting, or whatever. But really, it just means a rest, or it means like as you're getting closer to competition, usually, like you'd be backing off, trying to take away fatigue, so you can display how much strength or how much skill you've developed in terms of your specific performance. So how often should we deload? So I'm going to assume that most people are wondering this in terms of like the approach in a strongman competition, for instance. So the typical model that you hear is people who'll be, they'll have like a week off before the comp and basically have a deload where some people define a deload where they'll have like a complete rest. Some people will have like just where they'll do like lighter leisurely stuff. They won't do the specific things that they're doing at the competition necessarily. They'll just have like a lower intensity, lower kind of volume, general moving week. A lot of people will deload in terms of intensity. So they might keep their frequency and they keep the sessions very similar, but they just really back off the intensity. You get some people who deload in terms of volume. So different coaches, different athletes have different approaches. So which one should you do? So in my opinion, like you as an athlete, you've got to take ownership. If you're working by yourself, you've got to analyze data over time. Like what has worked best for you in the past? What has worked historically? Where have you felt at your best? Where if you haven't competed before, maybe actually like just think when you've had one of those magic training sessions where you've hit a PB or something like that, and you've been building up to a PB, and you can remember you felt amazing. Like, what did you do in the build up to that? What did you do in the kind of days prior, in the weeks prior? Because if you truly reflect on what you've done, like I think a lot of you will be surprised that there's not a kind of cookie cutter, one size fits all thing that we should all follow, and that we're all individually different. And also as well, what's another thing to consider is the fact that what's physiologically say optimal doesn't necessarily always marry up to psychologically optimal. So for example, you might have somebody say like myself, like I know that like psychologically, like I just love feeling like a relatively heavy weight or working at high percentages. I actually don't like doing a lot of volume. I don't really enjoy doing a lot of volume. I actually do a lot of volume in my own training because I feel that that's like I've just got no option. That's the only way that I'm going to progress and catch people up who are better than me, blah, blah, blah. But you've got to, you've just got to identify like what works for you. If you're somebody that like is not bothered about going heavy, and you like the kind of volume stuff, like doing a deload week where you're keeping kind of fresh, like we'll use like say Molly Wagstaff, who recently won my partner, who really recently won European Championships at Arnold, and I won the same day. Like our deloads would be completely different. Like Molly likes the kind of high volume, like she feels best when she's like doing like backing off the intensity, but keeping the frequency high. Like Molly likes to really responds to well training like whole body workouts each session, like moderate to high volume, and she'll happily back off the intensity and do like light work and speed work and technical work and skill work. And someone like Molly, for instance, even when she's like carrying a lot of fatigue, like psychologically, she won't want to stop training. Like if she stopped training 4 days out, like she'd get like two days out from the competition, and she feels like she's done it before, she's tried it before, and she feels like, oh, like I feel like I need to go in the gym and go through the movements. I feel like it's like mentally, you know, like the patterns and stuff, like she doesn't feel sharp if she hasn't trained like a couple of like 2 or 3 days before. Whereas somebody, and bearing in mind, like she's relatively experienced now. She's been competing 6 years, and like that's what she did before she competed on Friday. She at the Arnold's. She was training on Tuesday, and in terms of percentages and volume, like a lot of people would just see that and see it like a normal session, and she felt great on the day. Like somebody like myself. Well, we'll use somebody else as an example. So we use Kane Francis, for example. Like before he did England's Strongest Man Opens, and he came third for his first comp. I think we did like last kind of heavy deadlift session was about 10 days out or something. And he's like an experienced powerlifter, comes from a good great powerlifting background. And like he knows that like historically that say maybe like say the really intense stuff, the high percentage stuff, like on the squats and deadlifts in particular, like he knows that he needs to back off in that, like say a week roughly, give or take. But then he might do like say speed work and on the specific implements or whatever, like a few days before. But in terms of backing right off from the intense stuff, like 7 to 10 days out, and he'd be confident at like not deadlifting heavy for that kind of time, and then going and feeling great. Whereas somebody like myself, like when I've say I've reflected on say some of the stuff where I've done well, like say when I did the under 80 dumbbell world record, set that I did like 90% probably 2 or 3 days out, and a week out from that I think I did something like 12 to 15 singles at like 105%, so just cleans, like over my max, like really quite intense. That was a week out. But I'd feel like if I'd have done it, like if I'd have taken like the approach with Kane's example, for instance, like it would be too far. It'd be too far. Like I'd be getting close to the comp, and I wouldn't be feeling sharp and confident. Whereas if I took Molly's approach, I think I'd be carrying like muscular fatigue and like say DOMs and stuff that might be affecting my positions on the day. So my point is, with you three good examples there where we've been successful, and they've been the deloads have been like completely different. So I look at back historically, probably one of my best performances in a comp personally was when I won England's Strongest Man under 90, and I remember training in the gym that week pretty hard, like Monday and Tuesday as normal. So like say a normal kind of deadlift session on the Monday, like normal intensity and volume. Tuesdays, similar thing on the overhead. I remember doing something like 5 triples on the comp weight on the overhead event, and the comp was probably on the Saturday or the Sunday or whatever. And I just felt great and performed really well on the day. But obviously I'm reflecting and refining this as we go along. What I've used as like a kind of general framework or model for people. So by the way, guys in the chat listening to this, like what's your, like, let me know in the comments, like what's what's your like ideal deload? Like, say for instance, we'll use the scenario of say you've got no distractions, you're 12 weeks out from a comp. Like, when would be your ideal deload? Would it be a deload week? Would it be 10 days? What would you do within the kind of last week? Like, would you train specifically at all? Would you practice skills? Would you just have a rest from the strongman movements all together and do some like leisurely stuff? So let me know in the comments. So what I've done most recently, like say at the Arnold's European comp, was that I've used this with like a few people who say I've coached and maybe do that, like use it as a basic model, I suppose, for, you know, like somebody who's doing the first comp under my guidance, if you will, where I'll say they're competing on a Saturday or a Sunday. On the Monday, I'll do. So on the Monday and Tuesday, I'll almost like get the usual training week, that like the specific exercises for the comp that would usually be in the training week in the prior week. I'd almost like cram it into the first 2 days and take away like take away volume via like assistant stuff. So take non-specific stuff out and basically try and get their exposure to the say 5 or 6 events at the comp in some fashion that I know that they can recover from on those first 2 days, like say the Monday and Tuesday. And then as a general rule, what I find, and obviously I refine it with clients and we change it as we go along, blah blah blah. But I really like for strongman, I like 3 days rest, where say for instance you're competing on Saturday, Friday, Thursday, Wednesday, complete rest altogether. I say complete rest, I mean like not going to the gym lifting. So it might be like say, you know, like active recovery stuff, or it might be say a thing that I like to do in like that. That's actually what I did for my most recent comp at the Arnold's European. So I trained pretty normal Wednesday, Thursday, right? I think I had a normal. In fact, I took that model, and instead of training my normal Monday and Tuesday, I took my Monday to the Sunday and my Tuesday to the Monday. So I trained those first 2 days. So therefore I had my 3 days like complete rest. And yeah, like that's probably the best I've ever felt in terms of on comp day, for like a weight class comp, same day weigh-in. Like felt really good. So I'll be using that model going forward for myself. But like I say, context is key. So we like these ideal scenarios. So James said he trains at 50% of max until 3 days out, at which point completely rest. Yeah, but I suppose that's pretty similar to kind of what I've said, I suppose. Yeah. Dan said maybe the week before, like to have a lighter one, technical focus sessions, big stress head, so I can feel confident in the run. So this is an absolutely brilliant point. So it's like it's where this kind of what I said before about what's physiologically optimal it doesn't necessarily marry up to what's psychologically optimal. Yeah, so you might be going in a couple of percent more fatigued than you would be if you had the complete rest, but if you're feeling 5% more confident on your strategy for the events, like is that a worthwhile trade-off? Like that's what we're kind of thinking. And I suppose like a lot of people will argue with this. Well, as you get more experienced, you'll get confident taking bigger rests and stuff like that. Whereas personally, talking like I feel like I can talk from experience now, like in terms of relative to a lot of people that I talk to. Like I've been probably competing maybe 6 years or something like that, and for the last 4 years, like relentlessly doing comps all the time. So if there's anybody that's deloaded as kind of like or kind of rested in terms of getting themselves ready for a comp, Like I've done it like maybe, I don't know. I wouldn't like to hazard a guess, 50, 60 comps. I'm not sure. But and don't get me wrong, I'm not saying it's perfect, but I've explained a few of the successes, like reflected on days that felt good, and for somebody who's objectively experienced by the amount of comps I've done, by the amount of years I've been training, the exposure to all the different events and stuff, like I've actually gone the other way, where at first, like I'd have like a week off or a week rest, go to the comp, and I wouldn't work like. I couldn't work out why I felt more kind of sluggish than like I thought, right, I'm going to feel great because I haven't done anything for a week. Whereas I'd feel sluggish, like it was like almost like neurologically not firing or whatever. I didn't feel great. And then obviously through this constant reflection and tweaking and changing, I found this kind of little system that works for me. That obviously when I'm coaching my personal clients, like I'm recognizing the ones that are more similar to me, who this method might suit, but then I'm recognizing the ones that are very different to me, and saying that, like, say I was somewhere, using the example before, using Molly and Kane as examples, like I might be somewhere in the middle of them. So yeah, so in terms of So I've talked about an ideal scenario there, but realistically, like obviously when I feel like when you're starting out, when you're doing like say beginner comps, novice comps and stuff, like from the people that I've coached for beginners and novice comps, it starts out like beautifully in terms of like say these ideal structures. Like you pick comps that, because you're doing it at your own pace, like you're only doing it when you're ready for it, and like say for instance, Dan, like how many comps have you done? Let me know how many comps you've done. I can't remember, but like Dan's done a couple of comps now, and they've been really well planned out. Like the like plenty in the distance, so he can do like a nice, it might be 4 months out from a comp or whatever, so he can do like a nice general phase of getting stronger. But like basically, you enter your competition, and then you feel you had that like kind of surge of motivation and feel really good. So you might do so your next kind of 4 to 8 weeks of just general training, getting stronger, like general phase, like you've kind of got a bit of rocket fuel from entering your comp. And then as you're getting close to your comp, whatever kind of structure you follow, it might be 12 weeks out, 8 weeks out, 4 weeks out, but over the course of time, you're getting more specific. Then I can't remember where I was going with that, but what's Byron saying? So need a full week off, right? So yeah, you see, like Byron saying he needs a full week off, even like pressing, he's ended up in a lot of pain. So that's really interesting. So like Byron's coached by Loz. So this is something that if you've got a coach, like obviously I know these, like say Dan and Kian, because I coach these guys, and they credit to these guys. These communicate really, really well with me, and like if they said, look, I'm not feeling this isn't happening, like they've done loads of times, like we'll just change something up. Yeah. So you've just got to communicate with your coach, and like say like knowing that about yourself, Byron, is brilliant, because it gives your coach somewhere to work off. Like if you told me that, like my kind of general framework for the first comp, like it's miles out for you, and you obviously know yourself a lot better than say I do, or even Loz does. So I think that's a really, really important point of this whole chat so far, is that on deloads, like actually, like I say with loads of different topics, like take ownership, like trust your intuition. Unless like historically, like you've made a lot of error judgments and you're completely outsourcing like everything. But like most of the time, if you look at your intuition and the decisions you've made, like most of the time, most of us have been close to right. So trust what you've done before. And even like, say, the best coach in the world, like, you've got to understand that you, like, especially initially, like, you're kind of taking a bit of a stab in the dark and then refining from there. So if you can, like, kind of, if you're working with a coach, you know these things, like, communicate with them. Like, when you come to your first comp, say, right, instead of like waiting for, oh, I wonder what my coach gives me for a deload week. I wonder what he's going to give me or she's give me. Like actually, like, see all the way, see it as a two-way process, and just say, oh yeah, well, I've noticed that when I've competed before, or when I've felt at my best, it's when I've backed off X amount of days before. Or you might have certain exercises that you stay in with for longer, like. So yeah, Dan's done 3 ups now, brilliant. So yeah, Dan, when have you felt at your best on your comp day? What have you kind of done the week before, mate? So anyway, so I've talked about these few different ideal scenarios, but that was the point I was making. So, like, as you start off, like, beginner, novice, or whatever, like you kind of entering comps as you're in line with your confidence, if that makes sense. So it might be like, oh, you've got you first of all, like, we all kind of, or I encourage everybody to do this, by the way. Like, first of all, you kind of get pretty strong in the gym, or you enjoy the movements and start seeing a bit of progress. So it's always got to start with, like, in the gym love. And then you might think, right, well, I'm going to enter a comp. But when you enter a comp, like, I would always recommend that you enter a comp that's got events in it that kind of suit you in terms of your exposure and what you've practiced and like the stuff that you've done in the gym. Because at the end of the day, you want to do your first comp and you want to feel good, don't you? So starting out, it's about basically trying to give yourself the best experience possible, and you kind of cherry picking stuff. You might think, oh, well, I haven't done much log, so I'm not going to do that comp, but this comp's got excellent, so I'm going to do that one. I've got 3 months to prep for it, ideal, blah, 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 blah. But as you get more kind of, like, as you get more into it, like, say for instance, like, a few years down the line, say you decide that, right, I'm going to go down one of the pathways. Like, I love this. I'm fully invested in it. Now I'm going to go down one of the pathways. I'm going to try and qualify for the, I don't know, like, say, under 90s North qualifier. And then I'm going to try and go to England. And that you might go that pathway, or it might be like, say, the Masters pathway, or it might be like, say, various online qualifiers or whatever. So, or it might be like, say, novice, inters, opens, right? But as you keep kind of getting your fingers into these different pies, like, and you've committed to a pathway, for instance, and you're deciding where you want to go with it. The problem then becomes the fact that you're led by the pathway. Like, the dates are dictated by somebody else. Like, you're entering this qualifier, whatever the date is, and then you might qualify, and then the next comp 3 or 4 weeks after, or whatever, or you might not qualify, or you might not qualify, and then go down a different pathway as well. So you might go down 2 or 3 different pathways, and then you suddenly find you've got your fingers in these pies where you're not cherry picking anymore, and you're entering these comps, and or you're getting the opportunities for these comps, and these opportunities, because you're so far into it and invested in it, you can't turn down these opportunities. So then this kind of planning and the perfect phases and deloads and stuff, like, can massively, like, not go out of the window, but you've just got to be like dynamic with it. And let's talk examples of some of my clients, for instance, like, and we'll talk about people who've been successful. So, like, Shannon Smith, or Shannon Clifford at the time, she won World's Strongest Woman last year, under 64. Like, the amount of comps that she did last year because of the opportunity, because of the pathways, and like, in short periods of time, like, stuff with, like, say, we'd have like a main goal or main phase, like world or whatever, And then it'd be like, oh, well, I've got this opportunity to do England's Strongest Woman Opens. I can't really turn it down. I'm going to be on TV. I'm going to, then she's got like England, Brits, like, and some of these phases like massively cross over with each other. And in an ideal world, when you're not in the kind of moment and you're like, it's quite easy to say, oh, well, you just need to prioritize. You need to think, well, it's going to be sensible to, if you want to do that comp, then don't go and do that comp. But so some of the guys like who are doing like absolutely, like, you can't argue with the results, like objectively they're doing fantastic. Like, they're actually taking this approach of, you know, getting like taking all the opportunities they can. Like, look at, like, say, Chris Harrison, who a coach, like what did he do? Like, say, Norths this year, and then into like one Norths, one England, like before I think it was before he did Norths, he got invited to the Explosive 8 League. Like basically last season, set all his goals of like, I want to be King of the North next year. That you wanted to win the North under 105 qualifier. Brilliant. So I had this kind of like long phase in my head where we're going to work on different things or whatever during the off season. And then he said, oh, I've been invited to this Explosive 8 League, like this old, like the Explosive 8 League Open comp. And it was an opportunity to compete against some of the top open guys, like say Lewis Jack and Rampwit. Like it absolutely brilliant. He couldn't turn it down, and like the exposure he'd be getting. But these are like brutally heavy comps. I think it was like something like 5 or 6 comps in the space of like 6 or 7 weeks. And that was his off season. And it was just absolutely brutal. So he'd do that and then finishing that, like, absolutely brilliant to get through it. And then he's kind of like definitely needing an off season and a deload in terms of like a massive phase. And then the pathway is starting again. And he set his goal, and then he's won the North under 105 Norths, and then he won England's under 105s, and then after that he won UK's under 105s, and then he had the France one that was on yesterday. He'd entered that. He'd entered the European 105s that me and Molly won. He went to the OSG Worlds. He also won the Arnold's UK under 105 qualifier. Like, it's just ridiculous. But all these things came because he did well at one. He's getting an opportunity for the next thing or qualifying for the next stage. So even though that we should, like, maybe ideally should be backing off from, like, it's really, really hard to like, say, draw the line and actually think, right, we need to get like a proper phase, a proper like kind of lighter phase in before, like, if you want to do well at this other one or whatever. Like, my point is, it's really, really tough when you're getting provided with these opportunities to go for these beautiful kind of ideal phases or ideal deloads. Like, because if say, for instance, or use another example at the minute, say Kane Francis, he did it was speaking to him last night. It's only like 3 months. About 3 months ago, he did his first comp, came third at England, and then since then he's got invited to like SCL comp, Strongman Champions League. He's done 4 Strongman Champions League comps, done really well in each one, and got a little bit better. So he's got invited back. He got his first podium a few weeks ago. He came third, and then he won in the Gibraltar. He came second. And if you look at in terms of the program, it's like, if he had a deal, if you see some people have it, like, say, well, I've got a big comp, like massive opportunity, biggest comp I've ever done, deload week before, lighter week after. If he'd have done that, it wouldn't have been training at all. Like, it'd have just been competing and not go to the gym for 6 weeks. Like, so, and he's managed to do well, and he's managed to improve his performance every time. And he came second last week at SEO Gibraltar to Smaug Stellis, who came second at the World Tour Giants Live World Tour Finals last night. So, like, my point is like, it's not ideal. Like if you look at what he's doing, like in terms of deload and training, like it is really not ideal. Like in terms of like if you looked at a textbook and looked at phases of training, but it's working and it works. And I suppose like just like being dynamic and dynamic with the approach is like what you've kind of you've got to kind of get to as you get further down the line. So what I'm saying to say Byron and Dan, for instance, who are kind of newer to the competing side, like I think it's brilliant that you guys will be wanting to, set up like go forward with these ideal principles in mind. But realistically, like if you're still in this game, like a couple of years down the line, and you're competing and you're looking to kind of progress in your lane, that just be aware that if somebody comes dangling a carrot and says, right, Dan, like say for instance, Dan, like it's tough getting like what weight are you, Dan? Like if say for instance, like an under 70s pathway came up, Dan, for instance, and you got like an opportunity and you said, right, 2 weeks time, you can compete in the under 70s. Well, yeah, under 65s or whatever. Like, and you've got this new pathway instead of just like say doing beginners comps, novice comps and stuff. Like then you'd kind of fall down this like kind of lane where it does get tough to do things ideally. So what I'm saying to you, like say Byron, is like obviously begin with like in my opinion, the most important principles is knowing yourself. And if you're working with a coach, communicate these things with your coach, because it's going to be priceless. Honestly, like if you say what you just said up in the comments to Loz when you're getting ready for your first comp or whatever, like, and that'll just be a breath of fresh air for him, because he'll be like, oh right, well great, I can, like, he knows already that he feels good or bad off that, but he can base it off what you're saying. It can be a two-way thing. It's just brilliant. So take ownership, but don't get too attached to one way of thinking, like, because it's just that there's so many. It's not like it's challenging. There's so many kind of principles to take into account. So has anybody got any questions on the deloads? Yeah, exactly, Dan. You get stuck in that. This is my point. Like you'd love it. Exclamation mark. Like like emotionally, you'd absolutely love it. You'd be buzzing to do it. So you wouldn't be turning around and saying, oh no, I can't, because we're doing a lighter phase, and then we've got to do a deload this week, and like you'd be getting stuck into it. And say for instance you got this opportunity, you're 2 weeks out, and you were doing like, say, I don't know, like a block press and a 16-inch deadlift on whatever, and you haven't done those exercises before. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to say, right, well, I've got to have my 10 days deload or 7 days deload, or are you going to be trying to get some exposure to the skills of what's coming in the comp? And I think there's a lot of value in getting specific exposure right up to the last minute. So just in terms of like the style of my programming in general, like I'm a massive fan of, if somebody wants to get better at something, like I'm a massive fan of frequent exposure and high frequency. So like I've talked about loads of times, like say working at different intensities and setting different constraints at different intensities to facilitate recovery. So you can take this principle into your deload week. Say you've got your 10 days out from your comp, and you feel like there's 2 of the events that you haven't really had that much practice on in terms of skill. Can you get some stuff that's really, really going to build that kind of skill development and get you confident for the comp day, that isn't going to take too much from the neural fatigue and the nervous system bank account, and also do as like relatively lower volume, so you're not accumulating muscular fatigue. Can you actually do that? Or like, and I think in a lot of cases you can. So just a general one for like straight away, I couldn't help thinking it as soon as Byron said it before, like you said about your shoulders needing a full week or whatever. So a massive tip for people training for overhead, like I suppose in general anyway, if you want to improve your skill, like say just doing the removing the eccentric element. So as you get closer to comp, and obviously as you get like say a couple of weeks out from comp specifically, really where you're at the point where you know that logically you're not going to get any stronger, but you can get significantly more fatigued, and also you can actually acquire a little bit more skill. So what we want to be doing is, like, instead of chasing the strength gains and getting fried or whatever close to the comp, like, but still getting the kind of specific practice in. Like I'm a massive fan of doing, like, making sure you're doing concentric only work. So basically, like, say if you're doing a log, like say just doing the up phase, you push press and then dumping it from overhead. If you're doing axle, get to your lockout, you press or you jerk, whatever, then dump from overhead. Yeah, you dumbbell, dump every rep, even your warm-up sets and stuff. Like, instead of just thinking, oh, I'm getting to a certain weight, you're lowering it down on all your warm-ups and stuff. Like, even at 50%, doing, like, say, eccentric work on, say, log, axle, barbell and stuff, like, it can really, like, you can easily fatigue your shoulders, especially for people, in my opinion, who are good at using the leg drive, right? Because think of this as a, like, logically, right? The better you get at leg drive, in terms of, say, like, basically, the more efficient you get at leg drive, you're getting a weight overhead that's a lot higher than you would be able to if you were just using your upper body solely. So basically, what I'm saying is, like, on the eccentric, like, say if you're jerking a weight overhead, say for instance, I've jerked 150, and probably the best strip on an axle, probably the best strict press I've done on an axle would be maybe 90 or something like that. So if I'm getting 150 overhead and then I'm trying to do the eccentric, but I've only got 90 kilos worth of upper body strength in essence. So hopefully you get the point. Because you don't jerk it on the way down, or you don't use, like, yeah, exactly. You don't jerk it on the way down. You use a lot more kind of upper body eccentric strength. So yeah, just doing stuff like where you're dumping from overhead, or even stuff like getting access to, like, jerk box and stuff like that, can be an absolute game changer, honestly. And to be honest, this is another topic for another day. We're going off the topic with deloads, but that's something that's really helped me with overhead training in general, is actually reducing the eccentric element and the eccentric fatigue and stuff like that. That when I was doing, like, say, a lot of kind of, like, upper body strict press and bench and stuff like that, I used to have to manage, like, shoulder pain, elbow pain, wrist pain and stuff. But yeah, that's a little bit off the topic on the deloads. So what's Dan saying? So much better with the increased confidence, a bit more experience. Yeah. Back after 2 days, walk quite heavy, get stuck in. Yeah, pre-comp, just go light Monday and Tuesday, rest the week off. Yeah, good stuff. So yeah, you use a few relevant examples there, because to be honest, this is stuff that I'd have said very similar stuff like 2 or 3 years ago. But the difference is now, like what I've done as a coach, from a coaching perspective and an athlete perspective, I suppose, is, like, we've got some brilliant results. So there's objective evidence that kind of taking this approach of taking ownership and not following the kind of, the thing that everybody says when you're starting off, you've got to take a week off as you deload. Like, that might be absolutely perfect for, say, person X, but the likelihood is that everybody's going to be a slightly different variation of that, or they can be completely miles away. So hopefully this has given you some ideas, guys, and helps you with your next deload week. So take ownership, and yeah, if you've got a coach, communicate. So let's move on to the Q&A actually. So what we'll do now, so I've got a question here. It's tips on improving conditioning for strongman. Would you recommend AMRAPs, lower rest periods, EMOM, as opposed to like doing cardio and running, for example? So again, like bit like what we did with deload, like say what does it actually mean? It's like these are like words that are thrown out all the time that people just kind of assume that they know what it means. And I've wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach for, I don't know, 12 years or something like that. Like when I started doing strength and conditioning, and I'm still not 100% what conditioning means. Like my kind of definition or understanding of it changes all the time. So I'm going to assume that conditioning that you mean like in terms of like repeatability and, you know, what a lot of people refer to cardio as conditioning or whatnot. So tips on improving conditioning for strongman. So personally for me, I would always, I'm a massive fan of specificity. And I feel like if you look at, like, say, what you need to be good at in terms of your competition or your goals or whatever, and then work backwards from that. Like an easy way to do it is obviously enter a comp. So you enter a comp, you're 5 or 6 weeks out or whatever, you know that, right, I know I need to do this variation of a deadlift, I'm doing this overhead, I'm doing, say, farmers, 20 meters, I've got to be fast for that. I've got a sandbag for distance, so I've got to work for 60 seconds for that. So I'll talk about general conditioning first. So let's talk about general conditioning in terms of energy systems. So I'm not going to get too scientific because like I studied the science of energy systems 10 years ago, 11 years ago, whatever, and I have never ever found it relevant to discuss with a client. Like it's just, I just feel like it's just overcomplicated for the sake of it. I just feel like look at what you're doing in terms of energy systems, and then like how you can replicate it, and you're not going to go far wrong. So for some reason, like a big area that I see in terms of conditioning training for strongman athletes, you look at strongman. What's the most common, like, answer in the comments, what's the most common amount of time that we have to work for in our sport? Well, let me know in the comments. What do you think? And basically what you can do is work off that and think, right, how much of my specific work and non-specific work am I doing in that actual energy system? So, well, it's not Byron said 90 seconds, but you look at a general five event comp, and a lot of the time it's going to be 60 seconds. I mean, like deadlift for reps, what is it? 60 seconds AMRAP. Log for reps, 60 seconds AMRAP. Might be sandbag for distance, 60 seconds AMRAP. And then you're finishing with, so you might do like, say, a farmers or a yoke, it might be 20 seconds. Yeah, exactly. Definitely 60 seconds or less usually. But actually, like, Kian, like, you might have 60% of the comp or even 80% of the comp, three or four events at a 5-event comp that are actually 60 seconds. Yeah. And you see a lot of people training strongman, like a lot of people come from, like, say, powerlifting or whatever, which is great. But you see a lot of people training strongman with that kind of powerlifting mentality. How often do you hear people say, "Oh yeah, I want to Like they do the 1 to 3 reps or 3 to 5 reps. They don't go over 5 reps on over 5 reps is cardio. And you'll see them, like, say, even if they're doing high rep sets, you know, like say do a set of 8 on deadlifts, which is high reps. Like, how often do you see on social media people post a set of 8 up and they're just smashing through it because the like subconsciously they're staying away from this kind of this horrible zone of that time under tension for a long time. They might be doing a set of eight in like say 15, 20 seconds. So they're actually, in terms of energy systems and time under tension, they're actually getting, they're developing that 20 second zone, aren't they? So by no means am I saying that we should all be training, right, well, look at your comp and you've got, say, it's cardio, but still should do it. Yeah, but say you look at your comp, log for rep 60 seconds, deadlift for rep 60 seconds, Atlas stone for rep 60 seconds. You might have like a sandbag for distance 60 seconds. Like, say even if it's just 3 or even 2, like how many of you guys like would willingly, if you were just programming yourself and you didn't get told to do it, would you be doing sets of 60 seconds in your training? Or as a strongman, do you feel like we're drawn into kind of, we're more obliged to do like say sets that are maybe 5 to 10 seconds? I don't know. Like you guys tell me, what would you feel like drawn to do if you weren't led by somebody else's program or whatever? And I just feel like it's a very kind of innocent mistake to make. Like a lot of people just do that, just do the low reps and yeah, I do agree. Like say Eddie Hall, like was famous. Like say Eddie Hall used to famously say, "Get your 1 rep max up, and then obviously you 3 rep max, 5 rep max, 10 rep max, 20 rep max will all go up because you're stronger." Yeah, which I do agree with, and you are going to get a benefit. But how many people do you see that, you know, going back to like say what's kind of physiological optimization versus psychological optimization? How many people get into like say, and let me know in the comments if this is you, if you've done a set, if you've done 30 second set, 45 seconds, or you've just thrown it in there, you know, like an AMRAP set or something, and put a 6 seconds on the clock, and you get 30 seconds in and you're panicking, you're like, oh, I don't know how to breathe, or my legs feel like jelly, or stuff like that. Like, have you ever panicked and felt like that? Whereas actually these are things that can actually be trained, and you know what? You can actually get better at them. And like, say for instance, if you did like a simple little thing to put in your block of training, like, you know, put like put on any of the, you know, it might be say stones, say stones or deadlift or log or whatever, or sandbag for distance. Like, if you're not doing it as your kind of main protocol in your program, like throw something in there. Like, do it as an extra set, do it as a warm-up where you're actually just working for the time. Like take your ego away and try doing like really submaximal work and just go for the time. And actually these things of the breathing, where you're panicking when you're getting into the set and you don't know what to do. The only reason why you feel like you don't know what to do is because of exposure, because you haven't really spent time there, because you've just been doing the short sets heavier. That kind of that mental place you can go to, that zone you can go into your head when your legs feel like jelly, but you can actually learn that my legs feel like jelly, and like you kind of get like there's like a negative connotation with that feeling. You feel like my legs are like jelly. Oh, it must be time to stop. Whereas actually you do 3 or 4 weeks in this zone and you'll realize that you can keep going a little bit further each time as this energy system develops. So physiologically, as you kind of your cardiorespiratory responses improve, but also in terms of skill, in terms of skill development. And the skill development is something that, like say the Eddie Hall approach of getting that 1 rep max up and all the other stuff will go up. Yes, it will, but you are never going to develop that specific skill exposure of what you're going to be doing for a rep set where you're using the whole time versus going for 60 seconds on a certain exercise than you are. So an example of this would be sandbag for distance. And again, like I'm a massive fan of, like, say, practicing what I preach and, leading by example. And there's loads of stuff that I've tried that hasn't worked, that I'll hold my hand up and then I'll go in and refine and find something that works. But something that I kind of tried before England's Strongest Man this year, where it was 100 on the sandbag for distance. I just played around with my approach to it. And what I did, like, I recognized that what are most people going to be doing? Most people, I recognize the people that are competing against, most of them are going to be focusing on feeling confident. So it was 100 kilo sandbag for distance. So a lot of people feel like, build confidence with comp weight. It might be, right, well, I'll do some get strong with, getting up to 90, 100, and then I'll do some sets of like 20 meters, 40 meters or whatever, where, oh yeah, that feels good. I'll do some sprint. Whereas, like, what I did for that, I knew it was going to be less about the, like, say, how heavy the weight felt, and just basically like how enduring you could be, because there was no time limit on this. So in the approach to this, I was doing like, say, a couple of things that I experimented with that worked really well, but I hadn't had the confidence of doing it before, was actually going a lot lighter than a lot of people would. So like a lot of sessions, I was just using the 45 kilo sandbag. I wasn't even going up to the, even 80 or 90 or whatever. And I was doing like, I was thinking, surely nobody's going to go for 3 minutes on this or whatever. So I was doing like sets of 3 minutes. So I was doing like, say, I don't know, like 300 meter sets and basically like changing the rep ranges and changing the distances, and like I was going well below comp weight. And thing that I reckon, like the things that I learned with doing 300 meter sets that I wouldn't have learned if I was doing 80 meter sets or even like 120 meter sets, was I was realizing that when I was doing like the 300 meter sets with 45 kilos, what I would do at first when I was doing those would be I'd really tense up with the upper body, and I would like subconsciously not create like max tension, because I knew that, I'm gonna have to go for 60 seconds or longer, but I was subconsciously squeezing the bag like quite hard, and I was getting 30 seconds in with 45 kilos, and I was feeling like out of breath. My legs were like jelly, and I was thinking, it's only 45 kilos. What's going on? Like, well, I should be able to do a lot more. Whereas I learned that actually, if I optimized my position, I found a good rack position where I could almost like relax my kind of core, because I was getting the object resting on the kind of skeleton, if you will. And actually at the point where I wasn't creating tension, I was doing the opposite of creating tension with my arms, and I was actually trying to go floppy and relaxed. And then I was getting, instead of like starting to get out of breath and legs like jelly 30 seconds in, I was getting like 75 seconds in, 90 seconds in before I felt like I could have a conversation all the way through. So I took this principle up with the, like, as the weights went up, and then I think I came like second on the day. I did 100 for 170 meters. It was, which was like a massive PB. I hadn't been doing that with the comp weight in training. I'd been doing like 250 meter sets, a lot lighter. I was going a bit heavier on some. But my point is that how I would carry a 120 sandbag versus a 100 kilo sandbag versus an 80 versus a 60 for like different distances, and my technique is subtly but significantly different on each of those, and the cues that I think of are completely different. And I remember if I wasn't doing the kind of high rep sets and just getting stronger with, say I got to the point where I was carrying a 160 bag for like 20 meters, 30 meters, and got a lot stronger and got that progression in terms of, that I couldn't argue with, in terms of progressive overload. But I wasn't getting the exposure to the specific skill requirements of that specific energy system on that day. So the main point I'm making on this is that look at like specificity, look at what you need to do. And actually, if you've got events coming up in the 60 seconds, you better be getting good at working for 60 seconds. And this may seem obvious if the weight's light and you kind of can just rep all the way through, but actually this can be really good on like say heavy events as well. Like an example personally where I've done, I think what was it, 110 or 115 log at the under 90. I think it was more. I can't remember, 110 or whatever. The weight's irrelevant, but I did like the OSG qualifier at Chaos, and I knew that there was no way I could get 5, or there was no way I could get 5. But if I was chasing 5 within the set, there was a distinct possibility that I would miss the 4th in terms of rushing that to try and get the 5th. So what I decided was that I needed to guarantee a 3rd and like say get the ideally get a 4th in. So what I did with that, because obviously I knew my strength levels and I know like objectively analyze like every single thing that I do. Well, what a lot of people got, in my opinion, see people have the error is like, say if they know they're going for a 3 or a 4, they kind of very often just kind of get. How often do you see it at comps? Like give us a thumbs up if you've seen this at comp where you've seen somebody and they look amazing for 30. Say they're doing log and they hit 5 reps in 30 seconds, and you think, oh my god, absolute animal. They're gonna get 9 or 10. And then they scrape a 6th, and then they're gone. They've died, and they haven't paced it. Whereas if you feel like using that scenario, I feel that if you could objectively look and think, right, well, realistically, 7 would be a PB. I've done 5 in training, 6 would be pretty good, but 7 would be a PB. There's no way I'm going for 8. What's the point in rushing in terms of pacing and going through? Like, say what. A bit massive thing that I do, I look at the kind of time, you know, like say using the 60 seconds, using log stones or whatever. And I'm a massive fan of doing like say rest pause kind of style approach to your target on comp day. So on that day at that comp, I would instead of getting distracted by what other people were doing and then kind of trying to. Like I just knew there's no point in like all the comp adrenaline in the world. I'm not going to get 5. So what's the point? Like I need to be really structured and increase my likelihood of not missing that 4th. So what I did was split up the 60 seconds into 15-second blocks, and I got a mate to shout out, right, every 15 seconds, give me a shout. So it's like every 15 seconds at the start of the 15-second block, I needed to be starting my log rep. So I did this. And I was doing a rep, and then I was putting it down on the pads, and then just pretty much gathering myself. And it was a really good set. That if I feel like if I'd have tried to do it in 30 seconds, which I could have done in terms of time, like the likelihood of failing would be significantly increased. So yeah, use your energy systems and your specific conditioning training. Like what I'm saying to you with this point, look beyond the physiological benefits, and there's actually a lot of skill benefits in training the specific times or energy systems that you're doing. Another great example, I won't go too deep into it, but you like say your yoke or your farmers or whatever, and your yoke farmers frame or whatever, and you know that at comp weight, you look at the data, you think, right, 20 meters. 10 seconds is probably going to get me top 3. 9 seconds is going to mean a win. You might be looking at that and thinking, oh, well, I'm aiming for middle of the pile. I might be at 12 to 13 seconds or whatever, based on your level. the technique that you're going to be using for doing, say, a yoke run for 14 seconds for 20 meters, your gait and your stride and your turnover is going to be different to running 10 seconds to be running 8 seconds. So again, like energy system specificity here, like objectively analyze like how good you are at the specific event, and think, right, well, say you've got a, I don't know, say you've got like a 280 for 20 meters yoke coming up in a comp, and you know that, say, 9 seconds you can do right now, and you've got 6 weeks prep, you know that, in my opinion, I'd always be trying to go roughly about 10% better. So I'd be, if I was doing like, say I was running 9 seconds at the comp weight, and I knew that I was doing that, like I'd be aiming for sets of 8 seconds as my training weight, and then obviously go as heavy as I could within that kind of constraint. That's actually what I did for my last comp I did, where I did 280 for 20 meters, and I knew that I was going to be. In fact, this is a really good example and a good personal example. What I actually did, I started, and again, this is why you should be dynamic with programming and look at your data and not get too not get too attached to progressive overload. Like what I did, I was like something like 4 or 5 weeks out from the comp, and I thought, oh, this is gonna be nice. Right, I'll just start at 200 kilos for 20 meters, do maybe 6 sets or something, and then add like 20 kilos each week. But then what I did, I got to 240. I think something like I got to 240, and then I noticed that my times had gone down from 8 seconds to like 9.5 seconds. But it was weird because I remember doing it at the time, and the yoke runs, they felt amazing, and I felt so strong. I felt like, oh, put 20 kilos on last week and it feels easier. But because I've objectively analysed it, I'm like, hang on a minute, I'm 1.5 seconds slower here. So what I did the following week, instead of like, say, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I would have gone like, right, well, I'm going to go up to 250, 260 because I need to be at 280 in a couple of weeks. What I actually did, I dropped it down to 180, and actually said, right, well, I've gone from 8 seconds to like something like 9.5 seconds when I went to 240, because I was and it felt amazing. But because I was practicing, I didn't realize, but I was like practicing the wrong gait. I was like, it felt great, but I was practicing like a gait that would have been suitable for like a 10-second run, like that would have probably, for me, would have been the same technique up to like, say, 310, 320, maybe in 330 at that technique. That if I'd have tried to go for 8 seconds with the heavier kind of weight, that I'd probably fail. Sorry if that's a bit confusing what I'm saying, but basically what I knew that I needed to be faster, but I needed to practice the specific skills of the actual of getting my foot stride and my turnover faster. So what I did that by dropping the weight back and I did like 1 week at like, say, dropped it back to 180, and I got my practicing the foot stride at like, I got it back down, knocked 2 seconds off, went down to like 7.5 second sets, and then I jumped back up to like where my progression would have been at 250, 260 the following week. So I've gone like that in terms of load, but the speed's gone like my time went up, even though it felt great, but then it's gone down because I've dropped the weight down, but then it stayed the same because I've been practicing the specific footwork that I actually needed for when I was getting to the comp weight. I've been able to practice that by peeling back and going what seemingly ridiculously light in terms of percentage, but I needed to do that because I was going a little bit above that, and for some reason my like neurologically I wasn't I just wasn't, the pattern was wrong and wasn't suitable for for that. So I went back up to the 260 and was smashing 8 seconds, 7.5 seconds. It was brilliant. So my point is, again, like know yourself, like, and be objective where you can. Like, if you're not assessing, you're guessing. Measure your distances, measure your times. Don't go off field. I see so many people going off field. Like, how are your farmers feeling? Yeah, great. I've done comp weight tonight. They felt great. That means nothing to me. Like, if you like, it just means nothing. The amount of people were like, how often do you see it? Like, guys, have you seen it at novice comps or beginners comps where people look really, really, really strong for, like, say, the farmers or yoke, and they look great, but they're like bottom of the pile because they're slow, and not necessarily because they couldn't go faster, but because they've probably been training to be slow in their training. Like, in the lead up, they've been focused on the comp weight rather than the kind of specific energy system and actually doing they've been focused on the neurological kind of priming of getting used to the heavy weight rather than actually practicing sprints and the specific work. So I'll move on to some of your questions, guys. So to see what we got. Yeah, so glad you recognize that, guys, and be specific with the energy systems. And also, just to finish on that, like non-specific conditioning. So stuff like, say, on your off days, you might do as active rest or whatever, or you might go and do some cardio days or whatever. I would like doing some stuff that's in that specific energy system. You know, like, say, keep it dead simple. You could go 60 seconds on, 3 minutes rest, 4, 5, 6 rounds or something. That's going to be massively beneficial in terms of your general kind of how you process oxygen and, you know, your legs feeling like jelly. You know, doing that on a piece of equipment that you enjoy doing, that you find easy to recover from. A really, really good thing for general conditioning that I'm a massive fan of with clients, like, in terms of if I was prescribing this and thinking in terms of risk and reward in terms of recovery, Prowler's absolutely brilliant. And you know, like, say, hill running, because and the idea is here, you can smash yourself up in terms of, like, say, fatigue and feel it like your legs feel like jelly and you're out of breath. But because of because it's concentric only and you're taking the eccentric demands out of it, you'll find that a lot of people can recover really, really well from this compared to, like, say, you know, doing, like, I don't know, circuits or doing a load of jumps and doing other forms of like general work. Like that can be a really good way of getting some specific energy system training, pushing or pulling a sled, because of like I say, the concentric only nature. Stuff like throwing as well. Like a lot of people, for some reason, they find that throwing is something that they can train frequently and recover from. But it's exactly the same principle. It's the concentric eccentric demands. Like, if you think about it, you've got no deceleration phase in the like in the throwing. You're not having to kind of get it overhead and then lower it down. You've just let go of it and launched it. So it's absolutely brilliant. So even doing some stuff, you know, like say like bag throw for reps or whatever, you know, going for the specific time as your general conditioning thing. This is something personally that I'd be a massive fan of. If I wanted to do if I had loads and loads and loads of time on my hands and I had to train for more hours a day, this is something that I'd probably add in, would be non-specific kind of energy system training. Well, like basically where you're not just doing the event for the desired amount of time, you're just generally trying to get your cardiorespiratory response to it. I'd be doing stuff that you could couple with like train the specific energy systems, but couple with, like, say, skill development. So bag throw, absolutely brilliant. So if you took that protocol of doing 60 seconds of bag throw, 3 minutes rest, 4 to 6 rounds, you're probably going to get 40 to 60 throws in there where you're practicing technique, and you might be able to, and you've got enough rest in between to reflect on the set and think, oh yeah, what could I do a little bit better? And so yeah. Meeting you in Glasgow, where's your foot? Beltless work, recommended certain percentage. So beltless work, I would say for beltless work, like always work backwards and just think, right, well, what am I going to do at the comp? Are you going to compete? Are you talking in the context of competing? When are you competing? If you're 8 weeks out from a comp, 12 weeks out from a comp, are you going to be using the belt? I'd probably be using the belt for most of the work, because it's going back to this thing of the specific skill development. I've done it recently where, like, say, I've been say kind of rehabbing my deadlift and flexion position and stuff. I'm actually not frustrated, but like a thing that I'm finding at the minute, like I do beltless and strapless, and I find that my symptoms of my injury are a lot less, because I can keep. I'm not getting distracted by like my torso and my. I'm not having to factor in another thing of, the skill of working with the belt. I'm actually just putting my torso in a position that feels, and my pelvis in a position that I feel like, right, I'm going to go for it here, try and produce force in this without pain. Feels pretty good. And then I did it the other night where I did some beltless stuff and some strapless stuff, and then I went to add the belt, expecting it to magically feel, oh, it's going to feel a lot easier. And actually it felt like because it subtly adjusted the positioning, subtly but significantly, especially when you're working around an injury. Like my start position was off, and it just threw the whole thing out. So, which for me now, because I'm not going to compete for a while, like doing like say a beltless, you could do a beltless phase of training on your lifts. You could do a beltless, beltless warm ups, or you could do, like, say, a thing that I do because like I do. I'm a massive fan of like frequency in training. Like I'll often deadlift like 3 to 4 times, using the deadlift for an example. If I'm deadlifting 3 or 4 times a week, I'll definitely do one of those at least that's just purely beltless. But I like to split up the sessions, and I like to do, if I'm doing beltless, I'm doing beltless. If I'm doing it with belt, I'm doing it with the belt. If I'm doing it with belt and straps, I like to get my weight on early, because I feel like a lot of people, like, let me know in the comments, has anybody ever done it where they feel like they've gone to put on the straps, or gone to put on the belt, or they've warmed up to quite a high percentage raw on deadlift, for instance, and then they've put the deadlift suit on expecting it to feel easy, and it feels more difficult randomly on a day. And this can just be because the subtle difference in change of position. So yeah, especially if you're close to comp, I'd be wearing a belt on stuff, because it just significantly changes things. There's certain exercises that where it definitely affects your positioning a lot more in terms of skill. It just essentially makes it a different exercise. So like your deadlifts, for example, if you use a belt on, say, Atlas stones or sandbag loading, it changes your start position drastically. Stuff like, say, where you kind of very upright and fully extended, like, say, something like yoke, you might not notice a significant change in position. So you might be able to go quite heavy in terms of percentage, beltless in terms of your warm up, and then put your belt on, and it just feels better. And because the position's not significantly changing. But I would just be wary of that thing, because it definitely does make a difference in terms of your positioning. So I think I'm only trying so much shoulder 60 seconds. I was at the event, hitting the weight. So Byron saying, definitely agree with Jane. Is there a real requirement to know what your capabilities are at the comp weight? You need to have done it before to have a target to work from. So Byron, this is a great question. So, is there a real requirement to know what your capabilities are at comp weight? No, definitely not. And it's going to be but for a lot of people on a lot of events, it's going to be very costly. But again, it goes back to knowing yourself and knowing what you're like and knowing your recovery stuff. I'll use myself as an example, where I know I've got certain lifts that I can go really high percentage, a lot high percentage than what a lot of people can. Stuff like axle, log, dumbbell, yoke. I can train high intensity, high frequency, and I feel great, to be honest. So like at the start of a phase, say I've got like say a comp coming up and it's X amount of weight. Like for me, like I can go at the comp weight week 1, and then that gives me so much data to work back from, and very often, like, yeah, it's just so beneficial. But I'll only do it on certain exercises. I'll only do it on like other stuff, like say for instance deadlift or squat, for instance, that takes a lot more to recover from. Atlas stones now, like takes me more to recover from at the minute. I'd be working more off historical data and be thinking, right, well, actually, I know that, right, last comp I know that roughly my thing's going to be there, and basically do like a projected goal to work back from. So I would say, in terms of knowing what your capabilities are at the comp weight, it's massively, hugely valuable. But you do, so I would say that it is a really good thing to do to know your capabilities at the comp weight. But you don't have to do it in terms of testing, because this can be really costly. You can just do it you can just do a projected thing off historical data, or like say things you've done in training. But I would definitely be projecting, because then it can really, really guide your programming. Like say, and just a little thing that's come in my head in terms of it, like if you're programming yourself, or or a little insight into my programming, or if you're working with a coach, like very, very rarely, especially, well, not rarely, but like as you get more advanced with kind of as an athlete or programming or whatever, like linear progression is is lovely and ideal in theory, but realistically, unless you're starting super, super low, like it can be unrealistic to get lots of weeks of training out of that kind of like linear progression without kind of things getting too tough mentally or physically. But I do feel like for elements of your training that I think it's a good model to aim for. So say for instance, like if you're, say Byron, say we're using, say 4 weeks out from a comp, and you either like if you, in my case, if it was over, yeah, we'll use each other. We'll use us two as a, say we had comp weight, and we were 4 weeks out from comp, and we'd taken the overhead event. I know that I can recover really, really well for some reason from the overhead stuff. So I'd be testing comp weight. I'd be getting like, I wouldn't be projecting my data, even though the projection had come really close to what I'd actually get. Usually I'm right when I test it, but sometimes I find out something that would be unforeseen if I didn't project it. So yeah, I'd be testing that. But for you wouldn't want to be testing that, because you said that your recovery from overhead it can be really, really taxing. So I'd be going off like a projected thing. But for both of us, 4 weeks out, I'd be getting somewhere. I'd be looking at the comp weight and looking at how, in an ideal world, if there was no kind of nothing dodgy happened, like how we could linearly go from week 1 training to week 4 at the comp, week 5 at the comp. And if you have that projected data, whether it's tested or just projected, this can be really helpful in drawing that line. And yeah, like I said, like linear progression like that is beautiful in design, but very often doesn't happen like that. Using the example that I used before on yoke, like that was a linear progression plan, but like it came to it, and actually I went from there to there, but I went up and then down and then up, and so yeah. Hopefully that's answered the question a little bit, but yeah, no, same theme again, like take ownership and look at historical data, look at the stuff that you've tested before. So similar to losing position on deadlift when up in the load and then stripping back to nailing the position. So yeah, for sure. So Dan's been warming up for deadlift more recently. So you got any more questions, guys? Like just fire them in. I'm going to be on for another 8 or 9 minutes, and I've got one more other question from somewhere else to answer. So yeah, get your questions in. So warming up for deadlift more recently, Beltless strapless to blow overhand, then popping kit on for working sets. Definitely noticed it isn't as much easier as expected. Yeah, so great stuff, Dan. So yeah, like what I'm saying is respect that the skill is different, and sometimes it can actually be because this beltless stuff and the beltless and strapless stuff, because you're actually practicing skill as you're warming up of doing beltless and strapless, where sometimes you'll just go straight to your strap, straight to your belt. Actually, you're getting a lot better skill wise at the beltless and strapless stuff, and you don't realize, but your performance is high on that. So the jump in between going from beltless to strapless, like acutely within that specific session, isn't as big as, like, say, what it'd be chronically long term, where you'd maybe look at it and say, I know what my beltless deadlift PB is, I know what my belted deadlift PB is, and there's this big difference. So when you're actually doing it in practice within the same session, because there's that kind of acute benefit of nailing of being more skillful, being more skillful on the stuff that you're practicing in the warm up, but also B, like you've not had the exposure of the specific warm up in the change of position, like say using the deadlift belt for example, and you're going in at quite a high percentage because you've warmed up quite high because your belt is just feeling good. So that kind of recipe is like combines to shorten that gap. Does that make sense? Give me a thumbs up if that makes some sense. So yeah, let me know if I haven't answered if I've missed a question out. So what have we got? 6 minutes left. Right, great stuff. So we're going to go. Any footwork tips for moving fast with farmers and yoke? Try to glide and not bend the knees too much, and take small steps quickly like this, even with light weights. Practiced carrying the shopping home last week. So great question. So footwork tips for farmers and yoke. Yeah, I think gliding's a really good cue in terms of just general. If you learn how to glide and not be stompy, then the impact through your joints, like your lower body, like say what are the what are the common injuries you hear or niggles that you hear with people training yoke, training farmers or whatever? What kind of niggles and injuries do people get? And I'll come back to it in a moment. So yeah, gliding's really a really good cue. So you see people they kind of get the shin splints and the knees. My knees used to hurt, my ankles used to hurt until I found this way of, like, say gliding with and absorbing each step a little bit better and a bit more efficiently. So sometimes, like, I'll cue people to take silent steps, for instance. That could be a good cue for somebody who's stomping, and what that's going to enable people to do is move a little bit more efficiently, but more importantly is the likelihood of being able to recover, and therefore accumulate more volume and accumulate more practice in any given session, in any given training block, recovery in between sessions, opportunity to train it more frequently is all going to improve. So I think that's a really good cue. Learn how to glide. So footwork tips for moving fast. Again, I would look at data. I'm like a massive geek in terms of like being objective, and if you're not assessing, you're guessing, measuring stuff. Like honestly, like I put some of my results up on Instagram story the other day of like the yoke results I've had at like national and international comps. Like the last 7 comps I've done, I've gone like first and second. And a thing that I did, I remember watching I think it was the Arnold's Ohio under 80 class. I think it was 2019 or 2018. I'm not sure if someone could correct me. And I just there was yoke in that. And I just watched, right, what are the best guys in the world doing in the weight class that I want to compete in long term? Like, what are the best guys doing? And they were hitting like 8 seconds. They're hitting like 8 seconds. The top 3 were hitting between 8 and 9 seconds. So I used that, and I just worked out, right, 2.5 meters per second. That's the speed that I need to be really skillful at, and I need to get as strong as possible whilst moving with that footwork. So I think what I suppose referring back to the question here, what I actually learned here was if I'd have just been doing it trying to be fast. I see a lot of people make the error of going too heavy on moving events, yeah. So then they don't practice the ideal footwork because they're just focusing so much on the weight, like we talked about before. But I see people who recognize that, oh right, actually I'm going to get a benefit from doing speed work. So then they go and train speed work and train faster. But a lot of people will actually go too light with the weight and actually go too fast. And they might do, like, say, my point is, like, if you were practicing doing 20 meters in 6 seconds and you felt really good doing that, it's actually irrelevant in terms of the context of what we need to be good at. It's going to give you more value to, instead of doing 6 seconds until you're not strong enough to do 6 seconds anymore and then having this drop off and going into this different, like if you just practice, right, if I do 8 seconds and get really, really strong at 8 seconds, I'm eventually going to be one of the best in the world. I'm going to be world class at this. Like, I think that's a good approach to take and train the specific skill. Like, if you work backwards from that, next session, guys, this is a challenge. Go and do your farmers or yoke. Do 20 meter sets for 8 seconds. And work whatever the weight is that you manage to do. Go as heavy as, like, go max weight within that and see where your drop off is. And then analyze your technique and see what your feet are doing. See what, like, work out your turnover, your stride rate. Work out what your feet are doing. Because it'll teach you what you have to do when the weights get heavy to achieve what you should be doing. If hopefully that makes sense. But again, like, work back from that, and that's going to tell you the exact answer. So in terms of, like, just giving people general cues or little golden nuggets, like, that are just general for most people, have a look at your kind of walking gait and then compare it to, like, say, a heavy yoke or farmers. Video from the front, compare your gaits. With a lot of people, the gait's going to be like this. Oh, I cut my finger today. But the gait's going to be like this when they walk, in terms of the legs going parallel. You see, when people go heavy, how often has anybody seen people go like this? Like when they're striding as they go heavy on the yoke? Yeah. So what's happening here, this duck walk, like duck kind of, however you want to describe it, this kind of posture that you go into, like, forget what it looks like in terms of it looks funny, but just think about it. Like, next time you stand up and walk, or when you walk after this kind of after this conversation, like, just measure a couple of meters on the floor, a little target on the floor, and see how many steps it takes you to get there, doing with your feet kind of close together in terms of passing, and then compare how many steps it takes to go the same distance where your feet are going out to the side here. So for the same effort, if your feet are going out there, for the same effort, you're not covering as much distance. Like if you can get your feet moving like this and your legs moving like that, it's going to take you less steps to get the desired distance than it is to go like that. So that's the nugget I'll end on today. So practice that, and I think that's going to be a game changer for a lot of people who walk out like that. So Matt, how about one more warm-up set with your gear on before jumping in weight to your working sets? Again, this is a kind of thing where you find what works for you. That works for you, brilliant. Back pain from yoke, overweight, felt like a spinal compression kind of thing. Not sure what's common with it, to be honest. So I find with a lot of people getting back pain with yoke, or to be honest, any pain with any exercise, it's very often, I'm not going to say usually, very often a positional thing. And very often you can fix this and explore by going really, really light. And whatever your perception is of really light, go lighter. And then go for longer distances and think about the subtle micro progressions you can make in technique and explore. Find a position that doesn't hurt, because you might notice that you do like a subtle difference. It might be like a common thing is pelvic position with yoke. If you're getting back pain on yoke, very often, like say if you've got an anterior pelvic tilt, or basically if you're kind of kind of going to a duck butt like that, you, rather than being more neutral with the spine and the pelvis, if you're slightly extended here, which is very, very common, you put a yoke on top of that, and it's gonna like accentuate this dysfunction. So it might be, which is very common. Like if people go to extended, they might feel that kind of compression at the lower spine. So actually just going light enough so you can actually focus on. So using that as an example, again, this is just a general thing, but using that as an example, a simple fix might be just thinking about, imagine my pelvis here, imagine there are headlights going out of it. At the minute, with this kind of duck butt, my pelvis, the headlights are pointing down at the ground. So what I'd want to do is with my kind of normal gait, but also when I go to the yoke, is get this kind of headlights facing forward. That's the objective thing to look at, is this. Imagine these going forward, which can come from a combination of like kind of engaging your glutes and your anterior core together to change this pelvic position. So do that. Drop the load down so you can actually do some work in that position, because you'll probably find it really difficult because it's not your natural posture if it's not. And then do some work there, and then see if the symptoms change. And very often with something like that, you'll be like, oh, my back doesn't hurt anymore, but X, Y, and Z feels a lot more difficult. Yeah. In which case you've probably found the thing that you need to work on, and it's actually maintaining that kind of subtly different posture for a little bit longer. That, again, that's just a generic thing. It might help, it might not, but that's a common thing with yoke. And just positional changes can. So, by the way, again, I like to use myself as an example, leading by example. That is a massive thing that I put down to, like, say yoke being one of my best events now. Like, that was a thing when we went into lockdown, and obviously all the comps got cancelled. I don't know if people remember. Give us a thumbs up if you remember me doing like 1 mile yoke. I did like a 4-week block. I did a mile. I can't remember what it was. Something like 120 kilos for a mile. And then week 2, I did like something like 170 for a mile. Then it was like week 3, I did like 200 for half a mile. Then 220 for half a mile the final week. And the hardest week, like obviously it got hard mentally, like finishing it, but in terms of like recovery, in terms of like a certain area of my body, like week 1 was the most difficult because I was like kind of doing quite a bit of work that was I was trying to do it mindlessly and focusing on the task of just going for this ridiculously long time with this weight. Whereas actually I was noticing that, oh my goodness, practicing that posture for a lot of work, that even though it wasn't heavy, like I was getting like a bit of back pump. And I was able to like say, mine was, I was getting a bit of upper back pump. I was getting a bit of ankle pain on the right side. And I just changed, I think it was something like my thoracic, my upper spine. If I was held it where it was just like wanted to be, it was kind of aching after like say 100 meters. Where if I subtly just flexed a little bit and brought myself, which obviously I was learning what a more neutral position was, it would just went completely pain free, and but it was a little bit more difficult in terms of energy expenditure. So I just obviously I was getting loads of volume in, so I practiced in that new position. So that kind of niggle that I used to get complete in that 4-week phase just completely eased off. Like it's never come back. And since then, I've been able to accumulate more work, in like a ridiculous amount of work on yoke, because of like that repatterning phase that's like really, really high volume, really, really light. And same with my ankle on my right side. Like I used to get, and I realized that my gait, I was smashing down with my heel on that right side. And then I've changed my gait to absorb the impact with my foot better on every step. And the result is just marvelous. So, and obviously I found that out by mistake, but logically I looked at that and I thought, what do you do when, say you've done a deadlift peak or a squat peak or a bench peak or whatever? What do you do after that? What do people do? They go to very common to go to a high volume phase, or they might do some German volume training, or they just basically do a hell of a lot of volume with a really like a relatively low percentage. So why do you never see anybody doing that with yoke or farmers or moving events? So I tried it, and again did it with Molly as well. And again, that's one of her strongest events now, like because she's put so much money in the bank at that phase in terms of recovery, that you can build the other phases on as you like keeping your phases simple or your periodization simple, going from non-specific at one end to specific at the other end. Like if you're putting more in at this side, then obviously you can put more work in here where the magic's happening. Where I suppose a lot of people, big observation that I've made is like people see if you can get the what's the word, the like the macro cycle like that. You see a lot of people on like moving events, for instance, they'll just go from here to doing pretty heavy sets of 20 meters. Like they're not going super light for the kind of high rep phases. So some of you have done, I think Kian, you've done like some high, like relatively high volume phase. I haven't given you like 1 mile to do or anything like that, but like, doing, I think you've done sets of like 200 meters, 300 meters, haven't you? And yeah, what did you notice from that? Were you because obviously you probably going lighter than what you ever would have done before to accommodate for you actually being able to complete it. And it's beautiful because you can explore these different positions. If you're going like say 80-90% of a comp weight yoke, and somebody's giving you a cue to think of, or gait mechanics or whatever to think of, it's too heavy to change it. But so obviously you go from, going back to this phase thing again, you go further that way. The further that way you go away from the specific phase, the more tweaks and micro progressions and micro tweaks you can make. So people getting like niggles and injuries and stuff, go back to this phase, you can very often find out the problem repattern it. So when you come back up to peaking again, that isn't going to be a problem. So pain, discomfort, club and uncover. Oh, I can't see how she's moving her feet and legs to that quick. Yeah. So last little thing that I'll say on that, Byron, on the yoke thing, I think this is where a lot of people go a little bit wrong, is like looking what other people are doing and then trying to copy that. Like, at least take like a sample. At least take a sample. Look at the say look at the top 2 in each class or something, and you might notice like repeating patterns, but you'll actually recognize that, oh my goodness, like his or her ideal position or gait are actually significantly different. So rather than copy someone because they are good, like try and make an average of like a lot of good people, and then try and take that average and make it specific to you as possible. Scott, yeah, this is Limitless Fitless. Is it you, Scott? I didn't recognize who it was. Yeah, so actually I'll go over here because I promised that I'd answer this. So yeah, Kian confirms, definitely light. I found positional changes along the way. Brilliant. More aware of what you can tweak in response to things on any given day. Yeah, and credit to you, Kian. Yeah, I saw you do those the farmers. So you do a couple of days ago, significantly different. And I know they're not necessarily comp weight or whatever, but the kind of footwork stuff is significantly improved, because that's something that hasn't come quickly to you. You've had to graft it, and every credit to you. Brilliant. So how close to sit at the comp weight? So what was the question that he actually? Let me read the question there, because I wrote it down in my notes. Brilliant question. So I've just weighed myself for the first time in a bit, complete morning weight. I'm sitting right at 90 kilos, where I'm usually a few kilos heavier. So this is the case study of somebody who's wants to compete at 90. Would you suggest staying here, or maybe deliberately putting a couple of kilos on to sit at until the comp run up to the comp? I feel quite good, to be fair. I was surprised that I wasn't a couple of kilos heavier. I only ask, it sounds like the sensible thing to train at the weight you're competing at as close as possible, I guess. But I've heard some say about the carryover gains of being a bit heavier on the run. I just don't know whether it would work that way or just be an added stress again to cut. So, brilliant question. And I was thinking of giving a really generic sitting on the fence answer until like the last couple of last sentence, where he said that I just don't know whether it would work out that way or just be an added stress again to cut. So you've answered your own question there. Like, because link what you've said to at the start of the question. You've said like you didn't realize that you were so light, and you're feeling pretty good. You're feeling quite good, to be fair. I'd just stick at that for you, like, until you feel like you need to change it. Don't change it for the sake of it, like, because it's it's tough. It's tough. It's challenging. It's sorry, I'm not going to say it's tough. Like, I do it, and I just respect it as part of the game. Like, if it's a weight class athlete, it's the first event. Yeah, I wouldn't say it's tough, because I get into a zone where it's like, I just do it. It's part of the thing. I don't really like have an opinion on it. Is it a stress? Yes, it's very stressful in terms of and like, but very stressful on the body, like cutting weight. Like, you're messing with homeostasis significantly. Like, you got, but could it give you a benefit in terms of competition performance? Like, definitely, yeah, 100%. Like, And the way that you look at this, you look at when people are competing for millions. You know, you look at some like say weight like MMA, for instance. Look at what those guys are doing. What are the best guys in the world doing when it matters? Like say for instance, like me, for instance, I'm not a professional athlete. It's just a hobby. I've won a bit of prize money. I take it seriously. I've competed internationally. I love it. But at the end of the day, like it's a hobby. So because there's not major money in this sport yet, is there? But look at all my kind of choice to do this is intrinsic. It's because I want to do it, and I actually just want to be the best because I just want to be I just want to be the best for me. Whereas actually, you look at these guys like in the MMA, for instance, and some of these guys that they're doing it the skin, and they're going for the fighting for money to put food on the table, to provide for the family. There's so much like extrinsic kind of pressure on them. They could be fighting for millions. There's a lot of there's a lot counting on it. So I think it's a lot. I think if you're kind of trying to answer the question of like, is there a benefit in doing it? Look at what these guys do. Do most of them sit around the weight, or do most of them sit a lot heavier and cut a lot of weight, and then they get in the ring or the octagon, and they're just a bigger human. Like it's as simple as that. So obviously, yeah. So from personal experience, I'll give you my take on it for me in my context. But again, I don't want to kind of influence anybody with their decision on what they want to do and what's optimal for them. But for me, like at what I've done when I first started competing at under 90, I'll show you a picture actually. So when I did this competition, I think about 2 months before, say 3 months, no, I think 2.5 months, say about 10 weeks out, I was like 110, 112. And that was when I did the online qualifier, and I thought, right, well, if I qualify under 90, I'll cut to 90 and lose a load of weight or whatever. And I did that. And like in the week leading up to it, I was like 90.5. Like I wanted to be, like I didn't want to be cutting any weight in terms of like weight cut, water cut, carb depletion or whatever. Like I wanted to be as close to the weight as possible because I just couldn't fathom how I was going to make the weight. Yeah. And then I made the weight, and I remember I just felt so small compared to as I went further down the line competing with 90. What I used to do each comp was get a little bit more confident, sitting a little bit heavier. I'd be like, right, well, I'm going to do next comp, but I'm going to be like 91, 92 the week out, and I'm going to cut and see how I felt with that. And I was like, oh my goodness, I feel a lot better on comp day. I feel like I'm bigger, like I just feel better in general. And then the next comp I'd go 93, 94, and I've done it from like 98 the week before, and like but then I've also done it and I've gone over like say 10%. I've done it from like say 100 or whatever to 90, and I've felt like it's been too stressful to make that weight. And then so there's kind of going to be an optimal thing for the individual in the context. And for me, it was only when I was like wanting to like doing the bigger cuts. As I was competing at like say a higher level, like as national comps for like say England Strongest Man or whatever. And then when I started competing at 80, like say I did my first comp last year, same day weigh in at Arnold's, I was like 82 the week before. I was like absolutely shredded in terms of lean. There was like veins in my legs I've never seen before. And even like say OSG Worlds last year, I think I was 82.5 the week leading up. I was just absolutely diced, ridiculously low percentage body fat. Like it felt terrible. And then I went to replenish. It wasn't much of a cut. I was like probably 83, 84 the next day. And then I realized that all the top guys in the world, like they were like a lot of them are like, say, back up, like a lot of the 80s are like 90 kilos the next day, and they've cut from like a higher weight. So that's what I've kind of experimented with, like as time's gone on, and like I find my sweet spot. Again, this is a personal thing. I don't really talk about this like online and stuff because, well, a couple of reasons really. One of them is because people who make a big deal out of weight cuts and stuff, and they post they're in suffering, and water loading's difficult. Oh, look at my water load, it's so difficult. Like it actually annoys me when I see people putting on the story, documenting, not documenting it, but documenting it in like a light that like insinuating that it's difficult or challenging. Because I always think when I see those things, I'm thinking, like, you're choosing to do this. Like, if it's so bad, it's as bad as you making it out, like, just don't do it. If I thought it was like really, really bad and really, really difficult and outweighed the kind of what I was getting at the other side of it, then I just wouldn't do it. I'd do something and that's a massive thing that I preach, is like, just think about your specific context and just always weigh up the pros and cons, and like any of these decisions worth it? Like, but yeah, I found what's like optimal for me, like being absolutely shredded and like felt horrendous, absolutely awful. So for me, like my sweet spot is like 88 kilos. I think it was before I did the under 80 dumbbell world record, weighed in at 78.45 or something, or 78.5. 10 days out, I was 88.5, and yeah, felt absolutely amazing that day, because like say the protocol I used was like felt great from it, which I won't go into how I did it and stuff. I've actually got an online course on the that'll be on my link tree. If anybody's wanting to look at that specifically, I documented every step on that on the 10% weight cut, and said how I felt at every step, if anybody's interested in doing that. But yeah, and I've done bigger cuts than that, and it's been like go beyond that 10% mark for me, and the benefits of being a bigger person when you compete are like kind of outweighed by how crap you feel. So again, it's like pretty much every question that I answer is always going to be, it depends, and it's a sliding scale. And what I want to do, especially with these videos and stuff that I try and teach online, like I always want to try and put a balanced argument. Like I try, like I think to be fair, I think it's something that I'm good at as a coach, and as good as a teacher, is like looking at stuff like logically, objectively, as much as I can, detaching emotion from situations and stuff. And a thing that I used to go wrong when I started coaching people maybe 7-8 years ago, I look back and I actually like kind of led people into stuff because it kind of matched, like I thought it was right for them, so I kind of steered them into it, and it turned out that actually it wasn't coming from what they wanted to do, so it didn't give a good result. And I look back and I think, well actually it was my fault. So now what I do as a coach and a teacher, like, and some people might think when they ask me a question, they might think I'm being a bit awkward or being a bit funny, but because I don't often give a straight answer, or it's so seemingly, but because like what I want to do, I just want to educate, and I just want to educate and provide, like, say, this is what can work, but also this at the other end of the scale, this can work in that context. And also, like anything, it's not just a sliding scale, it's multidimensional. Like So I'll try and provide as many kind of options and different sides that, and provide enough information that you can kind of take what you're saying from me and apply it to your specific context and decide what works for you. So yeah, I'm not going to tell you what you should be doing. Hopefully you should be able to make a bit more of an informed decision off what I've done. Sorry, not what I've done, what I've said. And just a little thing as well, like a general thing that I'd say is that if you're starting, like going back to what we said to Dan early in the conversation, like you're just starting off doing some comps like for fun and you want to feel good, like you don't want to be putting pressure of making weight and cutting weight and stuff. Just like it might even not even like do a weight class comp, go and do some novice comps, like where you don't have to make weight and stuff, like it. But if you want to kind of say compete at the highest level that you could be, and you're fully committed to that, like say for instance for me, going for a world record, I wanted to do what was say optimal. I didn't care how difficult it was going to be or how challenging it was going to be. I wanted to do what I thought was optimal for me. It wasn't going to stress me out, or like I wasn't affected mentally by the stress of like, I just decided logically what's the best thing to start the cut at, and I went with it, and it felt great. But for somebody doing the first, it's like telling Scott you're doing 90. I did 88 to 78 in a week. Like you go and do 99 to 90, because I think you'll be like, nah, definitely not. Like if you're going to do that long term, if you want to be, like say you want to compete nationally, internationally, or whatever, or just climb the ladder as literally high as you can in the weight classes, then probably you're going to find that you get like learning how to cut weight and learn how to do it feeling safe and doing it really well and like feeling as healthy as possible. That yeah, over time you're probably going to do a little bit more, but like keep it as little as possible at first and keep it stress free. So hopefully you can make 24 hours same day weigh-in. It's a completely different beast. That was a challenge for the Arnold's European that I did about 3 weeks ago. That was the second ever comp that I did that's same day weigh-in for under 80, and also it was like in a different country, factoring traveling, fluid retention. Like that was like I got to comp day, event 1, 280 yoke, and bloody hell, like I was just that was just fun. All the prep was about making weight. And I knew that if I could like do that and do that well for me, then the kind of comp performance on those specific events would take care of themselves. I was confident of that. So, but it's like until you're ready for being at that stage, if you ever are, most people won't ever get to that stage where they think they're trying to optimize how much weight they're going to like. Just remember why you're doing it, and yeah, just keep, just like any of these answers to these questions, just keep having fun, and as opportunities come, and you want to add layers to that and make things more difficult and more stressful by adding more kind of variables into it, like I would say try and do that as it comes, rather than kind of proactively, preempt, right, well, I should be doing this because that's what other people are doing. Like just take it easy and build it up over time. So thanks very much, guys. Hopefully you've taken something from this. So that's great. So message if you're not part of the inner circle, if you'd message me and to find out details of how to get videos like this, answering your questions each week. So we're going to do each month. We're going to do a live like this. But each week, everybody in the inner circle gets to put a question, and then I put the video research and put the video together and put like a detailed answer into topics. So message me if you'd like more information on this. I'll work out how to put a link into the description. So thank you. Have a good night. Peace.